up, YouTube? Today the build is finally finished. I mean, I was able to do the Feared, I did the Shaper Invitation, and pretty much everything in the game. Even Chayula Breachstone, Chayula Piers. And it turns out that the build works pretty well. I even included some footage for some 5-link bossing. So if you use the 5-link for the build, then the build budget pretty much goes down to around 10x, considering Sacca Walls is probably like, what, 2x or so? I don't really know how much it is at League Start. And then a 6-link one is at least like 10x or so. So by using a 5-link, you can play this build at under a 10x budget, somewhere around there. So for people who are looking into play a budget Aura Stacker, this is pretty much as budget as it gets. So with the 5-link, I was able to do the Shaper Invitation and Shaper Guardians, and it went pretty smoothly overall. So I'm going to go over my gear. You can see I'm not using any unique flasks besides Aziri's Promise, and I actually didn't even roll some of these flasks well. But I have switched over to Malachi's Artifice, so we're no longer double Call of the Brotherhoods, and I'll go over why that is the play. But overall, build is extremely cheap. It was able to complete the Feared, and I look forward to people trying it out and letting me know how they like it. As a League starter, I would probably rate this as worse than the Stormbrand Ascendant, because the Stormbrand Ascendant has better defenses. But it's hard to say if Agnostic will stay the same. But I will try to make this build a Stormbrand build with the Aura Stacker with this exact same setup, because I believe that this this is also very synergistic for a Stormbrand build. So you would just end up taking these Runebinder nodes, these nodes right here, and probably even come down to get these brand nodes. So you can see that the Stormbrand is probably going to be pretty good with the setup, especially with how duration scales with the whole tree. But it was a blast to make this build and trying to figure out how everything fits together. There's so many different options in the tree. You could get the cluster down here. I have not gone down to get this cluster, which I believe is a mistake, but you probably cannot get this cluster over here until you're like at least like low to mid 90s. But I just wanted to showcase that you can actually do all the content at low level 90s. You could only use 2 large clusters and 4 medium clusters, which should cut down the cost of the build by a significant amount, as these clusters over here, these first amount replenishings, are the bulk of the cost of the build. So I'll go over the gear, and then I'm going to go through the budget of it, of what I believe, and we'll look through PoE Ninja just to see how the prices historically have reflected for the past leagues and how much it will probably be. For the gear overview, we have 2 Nebuluses. This one, of course, is way expensive, but I still have not bought another one. Tomorrow, I'm going to do a super budget version. I'm going to use 2 really bad Nebuluses, and then I'm going to use a 5-link, and I'm going to try to complete the Feared with that setup. The damage should probably be around like 3 to 4 million with a 5-link, if I'm not mistaken. So here we have Alpha's Howl. Again, this is extremely affordable. Malevolence enchant on it. Malevolence is the best enchant, or Grace would work. So what we want to do is we want to put the damage auras in the March of the Legion, and we want to put Malevolence outside of the March of the Legion so that we can get the duration for when we activate these auras. Now this amulet I recrafted. Now you might be wondering how exactly you can get this amulet. So basically it can be any amulet. Ideally you probably want a strength and dex amulet, because strength and dex is an issue. And then these, I pretty much just spammed some essences with multi until I got the flat ES, and then I just crafted % ES on it. So it should not be very hard to craft this at all. And then you just use golden oils to put Champion of the Cause on it. And that's a pretty simple amulet to make, right? So here is the interesting part about this build, which is I'm decided to use 1 Call of the Brotherhood. So if you play this, make sure to get 20% quality on the Call of the Brotherhood. It actually, yeah, it still matters a lot. It doesn't matter like extreme amount anymore because we're not a full conversion build, but it is still nice to have most of the damage be cold because of Hatred. So right now we're running a Malachi's Artifice. What this means is that the Flame Golem applies EE. Now in the beginning I thought Flame Golem wouldn't work because we were running the Lightning Aura, Wrath, and Hatred, but the Flame Golem only casts fire spells, and Wrath does not give flat lightning spell damage, and neither does Hatred, so the Flame Golem only does fire damage. So for bosses, which is the only thing that really matters for single target, the Flame Golem will always have EE applied for vulnerable to cold and lightning to the boss, which is minus 50% resist. So this allows us to use Trinity, and Trinity by itself is already 20% pen, and it's also, let's see, how much resonance can you get up to? Gain 25, lose 5 resonance, which is maximum of 50 resonance per element. So you get 5 per lowest. Oh, so you use like 10. It's like 50% more damage, right? Yeah, because it goes maximum of 50. So yeah. So it's 50% more damage with 20% pen. So it's by far the best gem in the game. And then this 50% pen for cold and lightning cancels out the awakened cold pen gem, which makes it actually more. So it just comes down to whether hatred will beat out the Trinity damage link and the extra pen from EE. And the answer is that at this budget or effectiveness, it does not beat out, hatred does not beat out this ring and Trinity. So this is actually a good thing because Malachi's Artifice, I think, is a 1 chaos unique early on. I'm going to do some more testing for Spell Slinger leveling, and I really believe this should be one of the first items you buy. This item requires level 5, and once you can put Flame Golem into it, you can do Spell Slinger leveling and be pretty set on, what's it called? Be pretty set overall on your, what's it called? Resist penetration for leveling. And I don't think Heralds affect the golems, right? So hopefully it does not. But yeah, actually, I'm not really sure if Heralds affect the golems. So this one says adds to spells, but does this affect the golem spell? I don't think it does, right? Because Heralds only apply to ourselves. So if anyone knows that, please comment down below just so I can make sure I'm right. So here we have March of the Legion boots. Ideally, you want the pen enchant on it. And if you could corrupt it for +2 auras, that would be even better. Because that's actually a significant damage upgrade. And then this Crystal Bell, I pretty much just used some Chaos Essences. And then as soon as I got life, I just crafted on flat ES. Like this bell could obviously be a lot better. Late game, you probably want to get a Stygian Vise, but I just didn't want to make the cost too high for the build. And then this is an Arcanist Gloves. This is pretty much just a high ES pair of gloves with some Chaos Res. You can get something much better than this. And for the late game setup, you want to use Hands of the High Templar. So once I think Hands of the High Templar are around like +4, you would rather use this than this pair, a rare pair of gloves, because you can just put in Empower, Smite, and Discipline. And that would actually give you more ES with that setup than using this rare pair of gloves. And it would also give you +4 levels to your Empower, Smite, which would actually be a huge DPS upgrade. And I kind of want to reinforce again into how big of a damage, different Smite is. So I'm going to go into the playstyle of the build, and then talk about the gem links real fast. But the flasks, I just have Quicksilver of Adrenaline, Aziri's Promise, a Granite. You could swap this with a Basalt Flask. You could probably get something else besides Staunching if you have a CB Jewel. Then Warding is pretty much mandatory, and Dousing for Silver Flask. This is not really good. You want to use a Cinder Swallow urn later on. But I pretty much just want to keep this build as budget as possible to show that it's actually possible to do the Feared on like a 15x budget with an Aura Stacker, which is actually pretty remarkable. So some of these gems, I know that if you look at here that you'll think it are worth a lot, but you really don't need the 1% RMR for Intuitive Leap or Might of the Meek. I just had these in my inventory because look how much mana is unreserved, that even when we cast our auras, we still have 131. So as long as this mana right here is above the cost of your spell, it is fine. So that's all you need to have. And the 1% RMR does not really change that much. So these, don't be worried about it, and neither is this one, because this one also has 1% RMR. And you could also get RMR on your jewels. So like the nice setup about March of the Legions is you need very little RMR. You don't have any RMR on your amulet. You don't have any RMR on your jewels. Like I only have 1 RMR. And these jewels go for really cheap because all it is some multiplier for spells and RMR. And I also have Pure Aptitude for some more, reservation help. So once you get more reservation on either your amulet or you can get it on these jewels here, because I'm just using like basic jewels. Like this is just 7% max ES. So all the gear is extremely cheap. And then we have Thread of Hope, which I think is kind of expensive, but after trying it out on POP, for this jewel here, you want to have Transcendent Flesh instead and unspec this node, because Transcendent Flesh gives you like 48 multi and it's worth it to have it over spiritual aid. So you can change this over, or you can just save these points and probably get like another jewel socket, which would be around 45% if you got a tri multi-jewel. So whatever comes out to be cheaper, right? So it very well may be that this is 1, 2, 3, 4 points. If you put 4 points into here, get some extra mana, that it would be more efficient because you can get like 45% multi on one jewel since we're dual wielding. And that's also something I wanted to mention, is that because we're dual wielding, it makes getting double multi-jewels really easy. So I don't know if I have any double multi-jewels that I bought. But even for this jewel here, you can get dual wielding, lightning spell damage, and that just unlocks a lot of different options for us when we actually go to shop for RMR jewels. And then this Watcher's Eye I wanted to point out because this helps us solve our Chaos Res issue. But you can see this Watcher's Eye is pretty bad overall in terms of damage increase. You want to get Hatred Crit later on. But there's so many upgrades on the Aura Stacker that you can get. But first things first, like say I have this character right here. What would I upgrade on this character? I would probably try to fix Chaos Res so I'm not taking these nodes. And then I would try to probably fix my flasks. My first item I would buy for this character is probably a Bottle of Faith and Cinder Swallow. I would buy Cinder Swallow and then Bottle of Faith for this character. And then eventually I would transition to 3 large clusters. So I'm going to talk about the gem links and then go over the playstyle, because there's actually some interesting parts about the playstyle that you should probably know about. For the gem links, we have Fortify, Smite, and Malevolence. Phantasmal Smite is not needed. You can just use a regular Smite. It just gives some attack and cast speed. So what this means is that you have 2 options. If you feel like you're squishy, you can use Fortify with Smite. And Fortify is pretty much, what's it called, a 20% damage reduction. Or so you can just consider yourself having 20% more effective HP. And if you want damage, you would put Empower into here. And then you would probably switch the... Yeah, you put Empower into this link. And then you would be able to empower your Smite and you would gain 3 levels on it. And I have Malevolence here. I have Grace, Herald of Ice, Flame Dash. I use Herald of Ice because it's like a little better clear, because it's kind of like having a pseudo explode. And then I have Flame Dash here. You ideally want Smoke Mine. Smoke Mine. So you would have a white socket here and you would Smoke Mine for mapping because you get the movement speed buff while running. And then you have Flame Dash for bossing because Flame Dash is a much better movement skill for bossing than Smoke Mine. Now here for the Alpha's Howl, we would put Arrogance and then Purity of Lightning, Discipline, and Purity of Ice. So the main thing about using Arrogance is it gives extra aura effect, so we can try to hit 300% a lot easier by attaching it to purities. But right now we're not at the 300% threshold, so it doesn't really matter. And then for Discipline, it gives us some aura effectiveness so that we have more ES when we actually cast Discipline. And for the links to Spark, so I have a Spark. So Anomalous Spark with 2 Proj Pierce is enough to play. You can also get +1 Pierce, I think, on your Amulet or Helm if you craft a rare one. And then you have Inspiration Link, Trinity. So pretty much for all these links, we want the more damage multiplier. So this is what? I think this is a 35% more LA damage multiplier with crit chance. So 40% crit chance. So it's like extremely good skill. Trinity is a 50% more damage and 20% pen. Arcane Surge is 40% more damage and 20% cast speed. Pinpoint is, I think Pinpoint is actually 120% more proj damage with 4 Intensify on the tree. And Spell Echo is just 70% more cast speed, which is kind of like damage. So you can see all of these things added together makes our skill do a lot of damage for very little gear investment. And then we have Vitality Aura. I kind of down leveled this because I didn't have the strength, so I have to level it back up. We have Precision, you have Clarity, you have Purity of Elements. This is pretty much just for getting the Chaos Res. So ideally, once you can get the Chaos Res, you can run Purity of Fire, and then you will have 86, 86, 86, or 88, 88, 88, or 90, 90, 90 once you get 300% aura effect. And then for the boots, we want our damage auras, which are Hatred, Wrath, Zealotry, and Haste. So that pretty much covers all of the gems. Now for the cluster jewels, we have, so you pretty much just want to run as many of these as possible, which is Essence Rush, Practice Caster, and Burden Projection. There's some other options for this, and it depends on what you actually want. So either of these are fine as long as it has 3 notables. So you spend as few points as possible to get to the medium clusters. That's the most important thing. I think you just want practice caster, because if you stack this, that means when you cast Spark, you actually can't get stunned. And this is just a very cheap option. Obviously, Vengeful Commander with Blast Freeze is probably a lot better and safer option, and you probably want to run one of those. But I just wanted to make the build as cheap as possible, and these jewels are probably like 20 to 30 chaos at League Start with 3 notables. And then you have First Among Replenishing. This is First Among Pure Aptitude. These will probably all go around for like 100 chaos, because that's what it actually costs on Craft of Exalts to roll it with chaos. And then you have First Among Replenishing, and then you have another First Among Replenishing. And after a bit, once we get some gem slots, whether it's from Call of the Brotherhood Implicit, you could run 2 Heralds, and then Purposeful Harbinger would be opened up to get a lot more aura effectiveness. So First Among Equals is the important thing here, because First Among Equals makes it so that our auras from March of the Legion last longer. So on the topic of March of the Legion, I'm going to quickly go over the playstyle for the build. So hopefully all of this, I went over the gear pretty in depth and the gems. So the gems and jewels section should help people get started with the build. But I truly believe that this build is pretty good, and it is actually a blast to play. The playstyle of the build is something that people always ask about, and it is a pretty involved playstyle, right? So you turn on all your auras. So we have Grace, Vitality, Herald of Ice, Purity of Lightning, Malevolence, Discipline, Purity of Ice, Clarity, and Purity of Elements. So you have all these auras. So this is 10 auras total, and now we have 4 more auras on our boots. So when we first get into a map, you want to cast the auras. 4 of them. It's pretty fast. It takes like 1.5 to 2 seconds. And it lasts for 36 seconds. Now the main thing is you need to keep in mind is if you cast the auras before this thing is halfway casted, it messes it up and doesn't cast it, even though it triggers it. So you see how here the Wrath isn't triggered. So in order to do it, you have to wait until more than half of the aura is casted. So there's a little rhythm to it, so you can cast it. So 4 of them casted like that, 36 seconds. And then when you cast the auras during combat, you want to make sure you have sparks out, so you still have damage going out and it's freezing the mobs around you, so you don't actually die. So that's why like having skills that actually do damage for March of the Legion is very important, because it makes it a lot safer when casting the auras. And also, you have to cast your golems at the start and constantly resummon the golem if it dies. So the nice part about this is I have left click bone armor. So every time I'm moving, if bone armor is off cooldown, it will cast bone armor. And it's 2209 shield. And you can see our golem also gets the shield. So the golem actually is pretty survivable outside of like big one shots. And I don't really notice it dying that much, but it's pretty fast to recast them just in case. And then this means that we will have the bone armor buff up almost 100 or like 70% of the time. And like I said in a previous video, chaos damage goes to bone armor before our life pool. So it actually makes us quite tanky to chaos damage. And that's pretty much the gist of the build. And then you can flame dash or smoke mine to move around. And then you have to smite every now and then. I think smite lasts like 12 seconds. So I can do a Blood Aqueducts intro real fast. And then I can also show you smite and why it's so important. So we get here into the thing, we summon our golem, and then you cast your 4 auras while running, and then you're ready to go. And then, let's see, how much is the damage? It's hard to say the damage because I don't... This is without smite, and it's at like 575k, right? So let's... So once you smite, the damage is at 1.4 mil, or 1.3 mil. I think I have a flask on. So you can see that there's a huge difference in damage between having smite. So it goes from like 500k to like 1.3 mil. So that's why it's very important to smite. So now you can see the auras are running down. It's at 4 seconds. So we want to cast the auras again. And you want to cast it before it runs out completely, because you want to have haste up when you cast it so it feels a lot smoother. So you see I recast it already, and now it's time to go again. And then you just do that. You probably only need to recast the aura 3 times the map, because you should be clearing a map in like 1 to 2 minutes. And then you're set to go. And overall, playstyle is really not that bad. It's really enjoyable to play. Playing Spark with duration feels really nice. And I feel like the damage is honestly absurd for the amount of gear the gear you actually put in. And you can see that because I'm going to play the clips of the feeder. Then I'm going to show you the 5-link bossing and the Shaper invitation. and then a 5-link map clear. So for everyone wondering for the budget of the build, it probably costs around 10x or so if you don't have a 5-link, and around 15 to 20x with a 6-link stack of walls. 10x or so, less than 10x if you don't use a 6-link stack of walls is what I meant to say. But I hope you enjoyed the clips, and I hope everyone tries out the build if they see that it's a playstyle they like.
I'm just enough to make you smile, and you need me to hold you close, and all your fears that you dream of will disappear and flutter on. Whoa, hold on just a little. We'll meet right here in the middle ground is where we'll stand. Just look on, and I'll look down, and all your fears around the ground. Then you said, all I ever wanted was to love like this. All I ever needed was to feel like something more than a closed door flat on the floor. I can offer so much more. All I ever wanted was to feel at ease. All I ever needed was to get up off my feet. 'Cause I believe in love. Hold on just a little. We'll meet right here in the middle ground is where we'll stand. Let go of the brittle, 'cause you'll find life is a riddle that we're not meant to understand. But I'm scared. But I'm scared. Hold on, right here. Hold on, right here.
Whispers in my mind, I slowly drifting by. All the poems I wrote for you, they made me blind, they made me
I hope you enjoyed the Feared. The Feared is kind of like a little sketchy, especially with chaos damage. I did do one earlier today when I had chain and then the golems got chained on and I died. There is some RNG to it for the Maven and what Maven decides to do. I think that one was cloned that you saw, so it was actually a little sketchy. But it's definitely doable with this gear level and without any super expensive unique flasks. If you have Bottle Faith and everything else and Cinder Swallow, it'll be 10 times easier. And I just wanted to talk really quick about how damage trivializes everything. Damage is the biggest thing in softcore that will make content easier and easier. And there is a threshold of damage where the fights will just be a complete joke. Like you see the Feared in that fight, I had to do a little bit of dodging and a little bit of running around to stay alive. If I had slightly better damage, like say instead of 5 mil POB DPS, I had 15, the fight will be instantly over and it'll be a complete joke. So that's something to keep in mind. So even if you're not the best at bossing with this build, you will reach a point where you don't need to have any mechanics whatsoever and you can just stand there and instantly kill everything. So it's just something to look forward to while progressing this character. So for tomorrow's video, I'll probably do a 5-link Fears demonstration. I'm not really sure how hard it will be, but I'm going to try it out. Because I really wanted to try to get people to play the Aura Stacker and change the idea that it's such an expensive build. Because it really is not with the March of the Legion boots. And you can see the items I have currently on my body, and they're really not too expensive. But if you enjoyed a video, be sure to like and subscribe. I do stream every day. I'm trying to think of a Ranger League starter, but I just can't find anything besides, what's it called? Toxic Rain. And then when I asked Quantrix in his chat, he took like 10 seconds to answer. And then his answer, I asked him, what is a good Ranger League starter besides Toxic Rain? And his answer was Herald of Agony after thinking for 10 seconds. That's when you know this class is screwed outside of Toxic Rain. But I'll try to come up with something. But thanks for watching, everyone, and I hope you find more mirrors and exalts than I do, and see you next time.